are back, and we are joined once again by friend of the show, Ken Klippenstein, investigative reporter, formerly of The Intercept, and publisher of Clip News on Substack. Ken, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, good to be back.
Yeah, great to see you. And I mean, it's been busy for you. You've been all over the place reporting on the Trump administration, and particularly the FBI and some of their efforts to create a new threat category, looping trans people into it. And it's under this subsection called nihilistic violent extremists. Can you take us through how this began and how the Charlie Kirk shooting was used as a pretext for this new classification?
Yeah, so the Trump administration, this second administration anyways, as soon as they came in, they started removing from certain federal agency websites and materials reference to trans and LGBT. They just drop the T and just say LGB, in some cases LGB plus. And I reported yesterday that has spread to the national security state agencies, the FBI, the local law enforcement, that kind of thing. So they've been working on this pretty much since the beginning, is when you saw this change from the Biden administration. But what the murder of Charlie Kirk did was it supercharged
Trump administration, you meant, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, change from. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Go on.
And so the Kirk murder supercharged this effort. And my sense from talking to senior officials, particularly in the Justice Department, is that they feel as though they have a broader hand to do this kind of stuff and push it farther than they had in the past, where initially maybe it was focused on some of the language stuff that I was describing before, LGBT. Now, when you talk about designating trans suspects as extremists, you're basically saying that this phenomena should be viewed when a person is either motivated by what the administration calls trans ideology or is a trans person themselves. You're saying that is an act of terrorism. And so when they're trying to slot that under nihilistic violent extremist, which is another new Trump category that they introduced a couple of months ago, what you're doing is you're trying to obscure the data that's going to end up being produced at the end of each year or at the end of every 6 months, because you have to testify before Congress and say, here's the breakdown of what we did. And if you're able to hide that under nihilistic violent extremist, then it's harder to ascertain this crackdown on the trans community, or at least conceiving of violence as terrorist and trans-driven in nature. And so that's what I'm trying to draw attention to, because they're so good at this kind of thing, not just the Trump administration, but the FBI generally. Kash Patel, the FBI director, just testified to Congress last week. And the testimony was really revealing, because he said there has been a huge increase. I think it was like 300% increase in their domestic terrorism caseload. So they're dropping the hammer on what they perceive to be terrorism. And when the subject of nihilistic violent extremists came up, he revealed that is a, quote, large chunk of what they're focused on. So the question is, what are these nihilist violent extremists? Because the majority of these cases have not been made public yet. They get made public when they're brought to court. So we still don't have a good sense of what the breakdown is.
And I am still struggling to understand how they are able to use the shooting of Charlie Kirk as this pretext, because initially they were sending information, they were leaking information to the Wall Street Journal claiming that trans ideology was on the casings, and then it was discovered seemingly Steven Crowder was behind this at one point, but it was discovered that no, that's just like TR something. It was like the name of the manufacturer of a bullet, a TRN. And then, okay, the bullets are not, the shooter's not trans. The bullets aren't pro-trans. Oh, I guess the shooter had a relationship with somebody who is trans. And now they are using that to categorize this kind of attack as a part of this nihilistic violent extremism. It's not even a trans person that did the shooting. It's someone who was associated with trans people.
That came from a deeply gun culture also.
Well, that's what they're trying to obscure, exactly.
Yeah, and when I talked to the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson's friends, it quickly became clear to me that in, small town Utah, politics does not reflect the kind of Republican-Democrat divide that we see in maybe major media or national media, if it does anywhere, because things have a very libertarian strain. There are people that are pro-gun, as I'm told Robinson was in his personal life, who also are pro-LGBT, as Robinson was described to me. But what the administration has basically taken from that is they've said, okay, so we had a trans lover, which I was able to confirm talking to his friends. And in addition to that, cares is pro-trans rights and didn't like what Charlie Kirk had to say about trans. He obviously had very, negative rhetoric about trans. They've taken that and they've said, oh, clearly this is some left-wing ideologue, and that just doesn't match the facts at all. Like, you can care about trans and not necessarily be engaged in other aspects of politics or even have a coherent political worldview.
You can
but
be
they don't care.
trans. You can be trans, like Caitlyn Jenner is infamously a trans woman who is a diehard Republican. It's really, that's it. The idea that they're drawing this link says a lot about what they're trying to manufacture here.
Exactly. And it's like they don't even care, because Sebastian Gorka, who is the senior director of counterterrorism in the White House, basically in charge of the entire counterterrorism portfolio, he has been tweeting about all these acts of violence involving trans people and suggesting that there's some kind of contagion that's happening and it's spreading and they're all inspiring each other. And, you go back and look through the data, like there definitely are several cases that he points to that are real, but it's like the idea that represents any significant, statistically significant percentage of the trans community is outrageous. There's just no truth to it. And the reality is the violence, if you're looking at the question of violence, the violence is committed against them overwhelmingly. They're the recipients of acts of violence, and even politically motivated violence, more than any other member of the LGBT community. So there's a kind of sad irony to all of this. But yeah, the Trump administration is its foot down on the gas pedal. You saw Vice President J.D. Vance yesterday give a speech about the left-wing terrorism. Trump just designated Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. First time ever that term has been used. Ordinarily, you have to apply that to foreign terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And then after this most recent shooting, the ICE facility, Trump announced that he's going to have another terrorism designation. And so one of the hardest parts of reporting on this is teasing out this kind of like miasma of boogeymen that they've created and they think are all working together. Antifa and trans, they even have a word for it. They call it Trantifa. And, the radical left, the far left. And it's like they are convinced. It's kind of scary. I thought it was rhetoric at first, but as I started interviewing people in the FBI, DOJ, it became clear to me they actually believe that these guys are working together and they're getting funded by foreigners and just all this crazy stuff you hear. They really, internally, at least how they're running the agencies, they really are acting on that. And it seems like they believe it.
I guess it doesn't even truly matter if they believe it or not, right? Like they also see it as a way to further their political agenda. There's also, of course, the usage of drone strikes in our own backyard, claiming things like terrorism, using that designation. And yes, this is more traditional in that it's technically people, folks from Venezuela or whatever, other groups in Latin America that they're saying are responsible for this so-called terrorism. But it is the merging of the war on drugs, militarism with the mostly Middle Eastern focused anti-terrorism activities of our government that has been responsible for the largest and most expansive rollback of our civil liberties in the 21st century, bar none. And that should be extremely scary to people that they are turning that language inward, let alone the fact that it's targeting one of the most marginalized groups in our society without evidence, who are a minimal percentage of the kinds of shooters that do mass shootings.
Yeah, it's really frightening. I mean, the global war on terror has basically been declared over in the sense of a lot of the authorities that they were deploying in the Middle East and conflict that they're prosecuting. And so what happens is these agencies are in need of a purpose, and Trump comes along and says, oh, look, actually, maybe cartels are terrorists, maybe Antifa's terrorists. And so they have an entirely new reason for being. So I think on some level, the bureaucracy is okay with having this new job where they might have faced being out of work. And then in addition to that, a lot of the principal figures in the Trump administration, from Hegseth to FBI Director Kash Patel and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, they all came up during the war on terrorism. And so they have this framework of, we're going to map out the networks and find out who's funding Al-Qaeda and where they're working. And maybe that worked in the Middle East in terms of understanding how ISIS operates, how Al-Qaeda operates. But to then apply that, you know, as you and I know, to like protesters or quote unquote Antifa is ridiculous. Like, as we know, like a lot of these guys, they're just sincere people that like believe whatever they believe, and you can agree with them, disagree with them. But the idea that they're on some payroll is just ridiculous. But that's how you would see the world if you've been trained to look at everything as though it's ISIS.
What do these designations mean in practice? And secondly, Trump's executive order on Antifa being a domestic terrorist organization. I've seen some conflicting reports on how much teeth it actually has, or if he has the authority to do it. A lot of these executive orders are like, it seems like, you know, scratching some itch for him where he gets to feel important, and then it's not necessarily enacted later. I'm hopeful that perhaps that's the case here, but do you see this having an impact in practice?
It's about authorities and resources. So when you have something like that, it says to the agencies, now you can prioritize this. Every agency has a list of intelligence collection priorities, targeting priorities, that kind of thing. Something like this is going to tell senior principals, who of course, you know, are being led by political appointees, hey guys, we got to start making cases around this. The way you're going to get promoted is, are you making, or do you have a caseload that's reflective of the priority list? And this is just one priority. There will be other ones, but suddenly there's more of an incentive for the bureaucracy to create counterterrorism cases and investigations and deploy things. I think a lot of this has been pretty misreported, because national security is very complicated, and so they look at this and they say, oh, actually, you can only designate foreign terrorist organizations. So that's true that under the law, there's only a law for foreign terrorist organizations. But at the same time, administratively within the agencies, they can still treat things as terrorism. That just means you can't bring up terrorism charges against them under that law, if that makes sense. So it's a subtle distinction where there's something to what you're saying about that Trump is not going to get everything he wants here, and they're not going to be able to treat this the same way that they would, say, when they're going after Al-Qaeda. But they're going to, but just like any business, when the CEO says something, the executive management across the country is going to look at that and say, okay, well, to get ahead, I've got to really create stuff that's going to look like I'm taking this seriously. And that means something. It's hard to know with specifics what it will mean, but it will mean something. And I think it's a mistake to just, as you know, I saw story after story when I was warning initially, when he started saying, I'm going to designate Antifa, Washington Post had some story where it's like, well, actually, you can't do that because there's no law. And I'm like trying to explain, it's like, okay, yes, you can't prosecute them on that basis. However, the way they're already treat things as domestic terrorism all the time. We know this. It just means that's how they approach it. That's the framework they're using to go after them and look at them. It just means that in front of a court of law, maybe that's not how they're going to frame it.
And in terms of the question of priorities, I mean, we've already seen it reported that they're diverting all of these resources away from human trafficking. Shocked that this administration isn't prioritizing human trafficking. I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but it's just insane to have them run on that over and over again and gin up, you know, it's not even conspiracies, but using the issue of Epstein, for example, for electoral gain, and then turn around and do the cover up, but also gut the ability to go after the kinds of people that are acting like Jeffrey Epstein in practice. I mean, it really makes you think in terms of a question of priorities.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.